by the 9 and 4. Welcome once more to the library. In this entry, we will look at one of the least known and both youngest and potentially oldest of the gods of the realms. A god who is many in one and an abomination to many of his fellow divines. Legion, avatar and god of the undying flame of the Necrotai. Perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and new guests of the library, I am the recorder, and I hope you do enjoy this brief look at this most unusual of gods in this, our 10th entry in the Divine Discussions miniseries. Now let us begin. In the many post-rain ages of the realms, a number of gods have passed from life into death. Some in war with the other divines, others to internal power struggles, and others still were in fact invading and hostile gods, slain during their failed attack upon the realms. However, no matter the manner or method of their death, each and every godly corpse or their remains were collected and interred into an unknown resting place by the god of time, space, and psionics, Damascus Skychild. His reasons are mostly unknown. However, with the events to come, his wisdom in this matter has come into debate. A rare thing indeed. This graveyard of the gods was hidden in an entirely different reality, a dying and empty place that had all but killed itself long before Damascus began to use it for the resting place of fallen divines. There were always a very limited number of ways to make the journey to this place, and most had never been discovered by any but Damascus himself. However, no secret can remain so forever, it seems, and during the years heralding the resurrection of the Necrotai Empire, that nation of undead and blessed of the undying flame, the new leaders of that nation found out of the existence of the divine graveyard, and worse, were guided to it by parties unknown. Before going on, it is important to note that the undying flame is not only able to transmogrify a living person into a quasi-undead being, or, in the best cases, into a full and advanced form of undead, such as a vampire, a wraith, or even a lich. It is also able to be poured into the remains of a being to create a new, resurrected version of the departed. It will have the memories and the mind of the being when it died, but to be born again anew in the undying flame. The soul of the original is not drawn back to the remains, however, making the new being indeed their own person, despite any similarities to the former in body or mind. I imagine most of you can tell where this is headed. And indeed, once they made it to a graveyard full of divine corpses, many of which died in contestation with the realms and her gods, they were all but frothing at the jawlines. Yes, jawlines. Frothing at the jawlines to gift these poor, unused and discarded bodies and remains with the blessings of the undying flame. However, when they began to pour the power of the undying flame into the graves and the mausoleums, something altogether unexpected happened. Instead of the nearly dozen or two departed rising from their rest born anew, perhaps because of the lingering traces of their divine spark within the remains, perhaps because of the massive amount of the undying flame used, or the fact that they were in a different reality. The energies and bodies congealed into a singular form and being. A composite with all the wisdom and memories of its parts, but with a mind and personality both wholly its own and new, was formed. The leaders of the Necrotai saw this not as a failure, but as a blessing of the undying flame, for they now had an avatar, and, as would be determined very soon thereafter, only minutes in fact, a god of that very undying flame. As Damascus would confirm as soon as he arrived on the scene, soon after the wards and alarms that had been so neatly sidestepped or otherwise bypassed were set off by the surges of power that the ritual had harnessed and released. This being was both divine and powerfully so, standing and staring at this new life, an abomination and sacrilege to both the gods past and present. Damascus could not find an acceptable reason to end its existence, for it was not responsible for the actions of the mortals that birthed it. Those mortals, however, would never have returned from the graveyard if not for Legion's protection, for Damascus was not nearly as conflicted about their guilt and the required punishment. It is known that only his mother, Her Majesty, Empress of the Gods, Genevieve Nodocare, exceeds Damascus in power. But on that day, in a single display of might, Legion made clear that whatever the reason and method of its creation, it was in possession of a significant portion of each departed god's power. While not a direct match for the Time God, perhaps, the fact that it was also capable of acting with multiple combinations of those powers and abilities, complemented by the very might of the undying flame, made the show of force, combined with its plea to not make its first day a life, a day in which it had to kill, a convincing and rather persuading argument to the god of time. It also helped that Legion declared itself the new guardian and protector of the divine graveyard, swearing there would be no repeats of this event. Even Legion understood the grave offense that its creation represented, and acted to prevent its reoccurrence by barring entrance to the graveyard with the power of his undying flame and divine might, claiming it as its divine plane, along with the already existing wards and protections, reinforced now with the knowledge of their obvious shortfalls. This would make it all but impossible for any god or mortal to enter the graveyard without Legion's knowledge and permission. Damascus acknowledged that while innocent of the crime of its birth, this new god seemed to take its self-assumed responsibilities not only with drive, but also with accepting the knowledge of the import of those duties, as if it were trying to atone for its own birth, for the slight of its creators against the divine that it was now a member of. Soon after, the mortal leaders of the Necrotai would be returned to their lands, and given clear instructions that to interfere with the divine again would likely see their destruction and decimation at the hands of those very divine, and that Legion would not protect them if they once more brought the ire of the gods onto themselves. Almost as soon as all were returned to Jam'mar, Legion found itself at odds with the secret counselor and in fact founder of the original Necrotai Empire, as well as its undying flame. The tragedy of Hubris, who was at this point still in a Man'ari form, having been present at the Dragwa home city during the 36 seconds of judgment. He felt Legion was a clear and undeniable challenge to his authority and power. However, as Damascus before him, he was not in a position to actively or openly combat or challenge it. The reasons were vastly different, however, as Damascus' hand was stayed by Legion's innocence and efforts to right the wrong of its birth. The tragedy of Hubris was stopped both by Legion's vast power, as well as the unflinching support of the Necrotai leaders that had created him. The latter is most likely the greater weighing of the two reasons, for the tragedy of Hubris was far too invested into the return of the Necrotai Empire to risk its new leaders turning their back on him. This resulted in an uneasy truce that remains in effect even to this day, even after Hubris regained his Analar form and grace anew, even further empowered by rising into the ranks of the Divine himself. Hubris was not in a position to act as he would have liked regarding Legion, as Legion still had the unwavering support of many of the other gods and the Necrotai leadership as well. This soft support of the other gods may have only been due to them wanting to counter Hubris to annoy and aggravate him. But whatever the reason, it made open aggression towards Legion far too costly for Hubris to risk. Part of the reason for the support behind Legion is due to the fact that it is not known for certain which of the dead gods' minds and powers survived the process of its creation and lived within Legion. While a few have been confirmed, many more are unknown, with Legion wisely giving no clues or indications on the matter. As many of the possibilities include fallen hero gods of the realms, none wish to bring harm to those now departed, friends, and allies. Further still assisting in the acceptance of Legion amongst the gods is the fact that it has limited itself to the matters of the Necrotai Empire, the Undying Flame, and the sentient undead. These matters are duties that few, if any of the gods wanted to be burdened with, and combined with the fact that outside of the Empire it is now a patron of, Legion is all but unknown to the bulk of the population of the realms. Legion keeps to those matters and affairs which directly affect its areas of responsibility and goes no further. And while many outside the Empire know that there is a god that they worship, the fact that Legion is, in person, an indistinct humanoid form engulfed in the undying flame at all times has made it very easy for many to mistake any sightings or images of it as just some avatar or spirit of the flame, with very few aware of the reality of the situation. Most, in fact, believe the Necrotai worship the flame itself as their god, unaware that there is indeed a god of the undying flame. The Necrotai, for their part, have followed in Legion's step in maintaining this veil of distortion and assumption. From his unexpected birth to his present subtle and mostly concealed position as the god of the undying flame and the empire that it fuels, Legion has made both waves and peace among the divines of the realms. It is a mark of Legion's restraint that at no time during the years since its creation has it attempted to exert power or influence on events or affairs outside its own purview, despite provocations from some. Dedicated to protecting those within its charge, and having sworn loyalty to both the Empress of the Gods as well as the realms in total, Legion is a god that many would prefer to forget exists. With how reserved Legion is, this is made all the easier for those that find discomfort in its existence and presence. None so far can point out any fault or failing within Legion's performance, or his dedication to those tasks and duties it has taken up. And while many of the gods might prefer that Legion had never come to be born, none can gainsay the centuries of loyal and courteous service that Legion has and continues to perform for the realms. With that final note, I'm going to draw this entry on Legion, composite god of the undying flame, to a close. I hope you now have a better understanding of this mostly unknown, yet very potentially potent member of the gods. This has been the 10th in our Divine Discussions, an Intro to the Realms mini-series, covering the many gods of the realms of Jam'mar. Perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and of course, new guests of the library, I thank you for your time, interest, and of course, your support of and in the realms of Jam'mar. Until you next find your way back to the library for your next entry of Intro to the Realms, I have been, as always, the Recorder. And by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.